What is meaning? What is purpose? What is value? Across the contemporary westernized world, there is a pervasive sense that any higher meaning, purpose, or value has been obliterated. In the void left behind, what remains is a hollow obsession with accumulating money and material goods, and an inert adherence to standardized and predefined values for fame, sex, status, attention, prestige, and so on. Many feel that their lives have been reduced to a materialistic struggle grinding along on a hedonistic treadmill, and that anything uniquely their own has been crushed into nothingness. It seems the system we live in has leveled down any and all of our own individual meanings, purposes, and values. What exactly is going on here? Why have so many of us been spiritually killed in this way, and how can we rekindle our own state of human flourishing? In this video, I will discuss the antithesis of this void, what I call spirit. I will define what spirit is, what it is based on, and how it arises, and how each of us has the capacity to be truly unique, carving our own individual path of flourishing filled with deeper meaning, a unified purpose, and higher value. Finally, I will discuss a simple system I've developed for organizing one's training and personal development in order to take real, practical steps toward cultivating one's spirit. Before jumping in, I want to note that throughout this discussion, I will remain agnostic about your own philosophical or religious beliefs. The only assumption here is that we all live in an objective physical world, and I will purely be discussing this side of the coin. Whether there is a non-physical reality beyond this physical one is ultimately another question. For example, you can interpret spirit as arising purely from physical properties if you are a non-religious physicalist, or if you are a monotheist, you can view spirit as one's God-given soul that is simply expressing itself through a specific arrangement of physical properties. In other words, everything I describe here can be interpreted in either a religious or a secular context, and I leave it up to you to work out these details based on your own beliefs. Ultimately, I want you to find your own path and connect with the meaning, purpose, and value that is uniquely yours. Now let's begin. To arrive at the concept of spirit, we need to build from the ground up. Thus, we'll use a key concept from philosophy called supervenience. Supervenience is defined as a dependency relation between phenomena. The basic idea here is that there are different levels of physical existence, and that phenomena in a given level are dependent on the configuration of phenomena one level down. In essence, these lower level phenomena constitute the higher level one. The higher level phenomenon cannot change unless the underlying lower level phenomena change. Further, whenever a specific arrangement of lower level phenomena occurs, the corresponding higher level state will always arise. Now let's move up the ladder of reality. First, we have the realm of physics. This is ultimately the level of subatomic particles modeled by quantum field theory. But there are also higher level phenomena that are captured by further approximations, such as Newtonian physics. For example, a baseball thrown in the air supervenes on the atoms that make it up, moving in unison through space. Next is the domain of chemistry. Molecules supervene on the atoms that constitute them, and their reactions supervene on the rearrangement of these atoms. For example, when two hydrogen atoms bond together to create a hydrogen molecule, the two atoms form a single quantum system with its own identity. This is also an example of ontological emergence, but in more minimalist terms, we can say that the hydrogen molecule supervenes on the arrangement of the two hydrogen atoms. Moving up a level, we enter the world of biology, living systems that supervene on a highly complex, interrelated set of biochemical reactions and molecular structures. In living beings with some kind of mind, the next level up is the psychological realm, where individual minds supervene on the biological systems that constitute the individual organisms. For example, human consciousness supervenes on the electrochemical signals propagating through the extremely complex networks of neurons in the brain. Stepping up one more level, we enter the social world, the societies that supervene on the interactions between members of a group of individuals. In humans, this level also includes complex cultures that arise out of and in turn structure these societies. You might think that the levels end here, and this is the common story that is told of supervenience. However, I posit that there is another level that is intermediate between that of the individual and that of the society that individuals collectively create. In other words, social and other systemic properties supervene on multiple people's psychological properties, but there's something that supervenes on a single individual's psychological properties. I call this phenomenon spirit. Spirit is a state where your psychological and other physical properties interact in a holistic way to create a cohesive state of individual flourishing, characterized by deeper meaning to your life, a unified purpose to your actions, higher values that you steadfastly adhere to, a robust self-awareness and self-consciousness, and a stable, continuous identity that is not only preserved, but grows stronger over time. This is the self with a capital S, the mysterious I that some philosophers have considered elusive. This is the state where you are the fullest expression of your unique self. Now let's talk about how each person has the capacity to express their own unique spirit. At a fundamental physical level, each and every one of us is absolutely unique. We are all made up of different sets of atoms in different spatial locations. These differences cascade upwards into biological differences, such as different genetic alleles and gene expression, different brain architectures and neurochemical profiles, and so on, and ultimately coalesce into psychological differences, including different emotions, values, thoughts, beliefs, and personality traits. Even identical twins are not truly identical to one another. While they may be biologically identical at the outset of their lives, all of the atoms that make up their bodies possess different spatial locations. Thus, not only are these spatial physical properties different, but the twins end up acquiring different genetic mutations and epigenetic shifts throughout their lives, and are exposed to different stimuli throughout their development. In other words, the fact that twins occupy different spaces leads to two separate, unique individuals. Even if a pair of twins were kept in the same areas and exposed to the same sources of stimuli their entire lives, these stimuli would affect their bodies and brains in slightly different ways. For example, suppose two left-eye dominant twins are watching television in a room. The light rays emanating from the television, and thus the information they carry, will strike each of their dominant eyes at a slightly different angle, thus eliciting responses in their brains slightly differently and leading to a different series of mental events in response to the information. Therefore, each and every one of us, with our own unique psychologies and other physical properties, has the capacity to generate our own unique spirit. Let's return to the issue I opened this video with. If each one of us has the capacity to generate our own unique spirit, why are so many people so uniformly spiritually dead? What is spiritual death anyway? Spiritual death is a state where there is no higher level spiritual state supervening on lower level properties. In short, it is a lack of spirit, where any individual flourishing has been leveled down by some internal or external factors. You might first think that uniqueness necessarily propagates up from the lower levels to the higher levels, but this is not necessarily the case. Multiple different lower level states can produce the same higher level state. Thus, physically different people can have some of the same psychological properties, such as a belief in proposition P or emotion X in response to an event. Thus, while everyone has the capacity to generate a unique spirit, both internal and external factors can drive physically unique people towards the same psychological and ultimately spiritual states. In particular, contemporary systems reconfigure people's psychological properties by influencing emotions, programming values, presetting thoughts, limiting beliefs, and reinforcing or punishing certain personality traits, such that a spirit cannot supervene on these properties. This can happen in many ways, including through culture, education, and media. These external factors, in other words, by reconfiguring lower-level properties in a systematic way, collapse a set of unique higher-level states down into the same state of a lack of spirit. This is how a system can turn physically unique people into carbon copy clones at the psychological and thus spiritual level. Their own individual meanings, values, purposes, and wills are erased, leaving behind a bare animal following its base impulses, prizing pleasure as the sole motivating factor, another mindless cog in the giant machine. The individual becomes a raw resource for the system to use and feed upon. This describes how external factors can lead to spiritual death. But are there internal factors that can disrupt the development of spirit? The short answer is yes. The extreme example of this is certain personality disorders or psychological constructs, such as narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, or psychopathy. The narcissist, for example, is preoccupied with standard, predefined values like money, fame, status, and materialism, with no higher meaning or purpose and no identity beyond the external measures they attach themselves to. Similarly, the psychopath has no values for anything other than their raw desires, and aimlessly drifts through life with no real identity and no conscience, incessantly manipulating and aggressing against other people to satisfy these primitive desires. For people with these conditions, where spirit would be, there is only a void. Whether due to internal or external factors, more and more it is becoming apparent to me that the overarching crisis among modern humanity is spiritual death. Spiritual death is achieved through nihilism. Here, nihilism is used in the most general sense of the term, leveling into non-existence, pulverizing into nothing. It is etymologically related to the Latin nihilo, I reduced to nothing. This can be applied to ideas, to entities, to processes, to existence as a whole. The central activity is that of erasing. Hatred of this existence, hatred of life, platonic otherworldliness, erasure of meaning and value, leveling of ranks and hierarchies and distinctions, rejection of the possibility of knowledge, rejection of the reality of something, physical leveling, all are forms of nihilism. Spiritual death represents the collapse of the living system as an emergent, irreducible self, down into a collection of blind physical processes. One becomes reduced to raw numbers, blank properties, brute facts, meaningless measurements, mindless movements, and empty drives. If one is spiritually dead, they are the living dead, an automaton, a bundle of empty drives, a set of hollow calculations. There is no deeper meaning, no higher value, no unifying principle. My mission here is to inspire you to resist this leveling down of your unique spirit into nothingness. I want to show you that there is another way, a path where you can cultivate individual flourishing and build your unique meaning, purpose, values, and identity. You will have to defy external factors trying to level you down, and you may even have to work on internal factors within yourself that are currently limiting you. But I believe it is possible, and you can do it. All this talk of nihilism and spiritual death can get depressing. However, as we'll see soon, it's important to be aware of all these factors that are working to suppress your spirit in order to cultivate it and protect it. Now let's talk about a system I've created for representing spirit and organizing one's personal development in order to cultivate it. I've identified 3 broad sets of lower-level properties that cohesively interact together to produce spirit: physical properties, mental properties, and relational properties. You probably noticed the giant triangle at the beginning of this video. This isn't just a cool symbol. I actually intended to have a very specific meaning. The left triangle represents physical strength, the right triangle represents mental strength, and the lower triangle represents relational strength. Together, these 3 components form a larger triangle pointing upwards in the direction of greater personal flourishing. This whole triangle I call the triangle of ordering, and this represents the spirit that supervenes on the physical, the mental, and the relational. As physical creatures in a physical universe, in order to fulfill one's purpose and live in accordance with one's values, one has to have some physical means of doing this. Further, one must also have the mental capacity to effectively guide their physical activities in order to achieve these ends. And one's mental capacity is in turn maintained and nourished by a healthy body. Finally, one must not only protect their spirit from external factors, including other people, that work to reduce it down, but one must also embed one's spirit into a larger world where it has meaning and where one can fulfill their values and purpose. Therefore, spirit involves a cohesive interaction of the physical, the mental, and the relational. As a consequence of this, we can organize our training and personal development to target these three key domains of our existence. In other words, in order to cultivate our spirit, we need to focus on physical training, mental development, and relational growth. Now, I'm not claiming that following this training system is necessary to become spiritually alive, nor that one necessarily needs to be a physically powerful genius to achieve individual flourishing. After all, there are many people with mental and physical disabilities that are able to live a spiritually fulfilling life. However, all things being equal, if you, as an individual, strengthen your physical capability, increase your mental capacity, and develop your relations with others, then you will strengthen your own unique spirit. And it is through this cultivation that we can actively defy the nihilistic leveling of the modern world. The first area of training is the most straightforward: physical training, or exercise. Which specific types of exercise you focus on ultimately depends on your personal purpose and values, which you determine through exercises that occur during your mental training, and this will be a highly individualized process. Once you identify which physical activities you need to focus on, the next step is to research exercise methods and programs for performing and improving in these activities. For example, let's say you value rescuing others from danger, and you have identified that your purpose to fulfill this value is to become a firefighter. You will thus want to focus on improving your cardiovascular health, power, and muscular strength and endurance, and you will therefore adhere to an exercise regimen involving things like high-intensity interval training, agility drills, weightlifting, and bodyweight exercises. From here, it is straightforward to learn about well-studied exercise programs for effectively improving these physical parameters. Note that, even if your mission does not directly involve strenuous physical activity, it is nonetheless vital to exercise. Maintaining a healthy body will not only enable you to fulfill your mission for as long as possible by staving off aging and chronic disease, but will also feed into a healthy brain that functions as optimally as possible. The second area of training is a bit less straightforward, but still one most of us are familiar with: mental training. This involves everything from mental conditioning exercises like meditation and willpower training, to intellectual activities such as reading books and solving difficult technical problems. Again, the specific activities will in large part depend on your specific values and purpose. However, I strongly recommend that everyone perform some basic mental training exercises. In particular, I recommend meditation, writing, and self-reflection to discover what your values truly are, what your purpose is, what the meaning of your life will be, and who you are. This process of knowing yourself will identify your spirit as a whole and will help organize all of the rest of your activities. These basic mental activities thus form a crucial aspect of cultivating your spirit. To give a concrete example of mental training beyond the fundamentals, let's say you value improving people's health and you have identified your purpose as researching potential cures for cancer or other diseases. In this case, in addition to performing and publishing your own work, you will want to regularly read other scientific papers relating to these diseases and their diagnosis and treatment. But even more importantly, you will want to cultivate and regularly exercise the ability to deeply and meditatively think about everything from designing new studies and investigations to solving the complex technical problems and puzzles you will encounter. Finally, let's talk about the third and final component of spirit. Up until now, I've been describing spirit as existing on an intermediate level between the psychological and social levels, and as supervening on one's individual psychological and base level properties. However, this is an oversimplification, as there is really a third component of spirit that forms the foundation upon which the physical and mental components reside. This is the relational component, and this component encompasses the properties of one's relations with others. Thus, while in a sense spirit is between the psychological and social levels, it is also in another sense parallel to the social level, since it also supervenes on the individual's relations to others. Training in the area of the relational is less straightforward, but is critical and should not be overlooked. To start mapping out how to do this, let's break down what relational strength consists of. The first set of relational properties encompasses your ability to protect your activities in spirit from infringement and suppression by others, and to freely express your will. This is your independence, freedom, and autonomy. Independence is necessary to have the ability and confidence to adhere to one's values, even when these values don't line up with cultural norms, social pressures, financial obligations, and interpersonal expectations. One must have the personal freedom to pursue a purpose that fulfills these values. And individual autonomy is required for establishing a strong identity that differentiates oneself from others and allows their unique spirit to thrive without being swallowed up by some outside entity or process. This is why our discussion about spiritual death earlier was important. This gives you an awareness of all of the factors working to suppress your spirit, and thus provides a roadmap for increasing your resistance to these factors. If you are mentally independent and have a strong set of critical thinking skills, for example, then media which feed you pre-configured ideas will have less of an influence on you. And if you are not dependent on social approval to derive a sense of self-worth, then you will be indifferent to the predefined values others try to impose on you, and will instead freely cultivate your own. This will all work to keep your individual uniqueness propagating all the way up the levels to your unique spirit. A classic fitness and personal development related example here is the false dichotomy between physical prowess and intellectual capability, the stereotypical antagonism between the jocks and the nerds. Contemporary media has promulgated this idea of such a dichotomy for decades, and the cultural results of this actively work to keep many people spiritually suppressed. Many nerds are conditioned to identify as intellectuals who are above menial physical effort, and learn to associate physical activity and training with being a low IQ meathead, while many athletes are trained to look down on intellectuals as pencil-necked weaklings, and disparage learning something like math beyond what is needed to maintain their place on a team. The reality is, both intellectual and athletic activities are forms of strengthening oneself, and they interact to generate a state of flourishing. By denigrating and neglecting one aspect, the unity of the triangle is broken, and this works to prevent any flourishing spirit from supervening on it. Relational strength gives one the mental freedom to overcome damaging illusions and biases, such as this. Developing in this domain is not straightforward, and it will require you to organize your mental and physical training in a very focused way. For example, you will very likely need to meditate to let go of your need for social approval or your fear of stepping outside of prescribed boundaries. Here are some goals to work towards that may help guide your efforts. Challenge and overcome your cultural training and social instincts. Develop your own self-sufficient property. Make steps to quit your unfulfilling day job. Build up your physical and mental skills to increase your self-sufficiency. Create your own principles and rules and live by them. Reject contemporary norms and values that do not align with your own. Resist any would-be authorities attempting to impose their will upon you. By using these guidelines, you will expand your relational strength and thus free your spirit. Now let's move on to the second set of relational properties. This second, much broader set encompasses the health of your relations with others and how you fit into the world you live in. This is the final key that provides the context for your purpose and instills deeper meaning into your life. In order for a spirit to exist and thrive, it must occur within a larger world of relations. Values, meaning, and purpose do not exist in isolation, but are only intelligible within such a world. Developing this aspect of the relational involves improving your relationships with others, expanding your empathy, putting your efforts into practical endeavors such as volunteer or other meaningful work, and, in your own unique way, creatively applying your strengths and talents to building others up and improving the world. This aspect of the relational captures the reality that individual flourishing does not happen in a vacuum, Thus, while spirit is a highly individual phenomenon, and personal freedom and independence are necessary to preserve it, it also occurs in a larger world. The key here is to understand that while all phenomena in existence are not united into an indivisible whole, so it is the case that no phenomena are discrete and absolutely divided from one another. There is no absolute division, just as there is no total unity. All are apart, and yet all are interconnected. Union is real, even if it is not complete, and inversely, by the same exact reasoning, individuality is not complete, even if it is real. I'll talk more about this in a future video, but basically, this is what existence is. Existence is the change that happens between being and nothing. It is always incomplete. Therefore, in order to cultivate our spirit, we must strive for freedom and independence, while simultaneously understanding that not only are absolute freedom and independence impossible, but they are not even desirable, since a spirit must be embedded into a world of relations. Therefore, while we must not allow our unique selves to be swallowed up into nothingness, at the same time, we must remain wary and skeptical towards any modern ideas of hyper-individualism. Developing in this area, of course, is the least amenable to systematic training formulations. There is no universal system or method for improving your relations with others and finding yourself in the world. What exactly you do will be highly dependent on your specific values, purpose, and meaning. Through your mental training and conditioning, you will find your own way. The key is to define your purpose in accordance with your values, and to then identify how this purpose will impact others and the world. This will show you how you need to improve your relationships in order to fulfill your mission. Through this mission, you will express the meaning of your life. This concludes our first discussion of spirit. My goal here was to give you the metaphysical blueprint for discovering and building your own unique spirit, and to show you how to defy the nihilistic leveling of the modern world. I want you to know that you are not a resource, you are not a statistic, you are not a number. You are fundamentally unique, yourself and no one else, and you can meaningfully live and flourish in your own way. I hope you found the philosophical aspects of this discussion insightful, and that you have been inspired to cultivate your spirit and find your own unique values, purpose, meaning, and identity. If so, let me know in the comments below, and I'll create more videos discussing this and similar topics. Now develop your mind, build your body, forge your relations, and go forth and flourish. Remember, the process is the goal.